Hello and welcome to Wildlife Cam. I've just come back from 5 nights spent camping at Satara, which is one of the bigger rest camps in Kruger National Park. About 10 kilometers from Satara there's a dam called Insamani Dam, which is where most of the people staying at Satara will visit at least once a day because there's always something going on there. The matriarch looks like one of our elephants with her wonky tusk. In theory it is possible that our elephants could be all the way over there, as they aren't territorial and they do move over huge distances, but I don't think so. The Kruger Park is almost always pretty busy with tourists, so the animals have become very accustomed to us. Every night there were hyenas coming past the campsite. It is, I think, the second biggest camp in the park, and the campsite was pretty full, so there's always going to be people flinging food over the fence for them. Like they became like dogs just waiting outside. On the first morning we headed down the main road towards Chukwan picnic site and then came around the back route via Orpin Dam and back to Satara, and this hyena we found at Nkaya Pan. And these are double-banded sandgrouse, a very sweet, gentle bird. They don't like to move off when you approach. They shuffle off reluctantly and then turn around and make sure to always keep a watchful eye on you. That's a male in the background with the 2 bands on his chest. This is only the second time I've seen one of these snakes, and both times they were extremely aggressive. This one was tiny, about 15 centimeters, but it refused to get off the road. It kept on trying to bite. So eventually I had to get a map book and scoop it up and fling it off into the grass. Now there, in the middle, is a lion. There were 3 male lions lying there, although it was very hard to see them. As soon as they went down into the grass, they disappeared. But there was a herd of buffalo not too far away from them. And we thought they were going to be looking at attacking the buffalo, but they were not very confident, and eventually they moved off. But looking at them, when you got a better view of the males, they weren't fully matured. They were still a bit thin on top of the mane, so I think it would take a few more years before they were confident enough to take on a herd of buffalo. And this is Chukwan picnic site. Looking very peaceful, but just as we arrived there, a baboon had got into the kitchen and run off with a loaf of bread, and there was some mayhem, but it had calmed down by now. This bull elephant confused me at first because he wasn't particularly big in body size, and his tusks, although very long, were thin. But it's definitely a male, so it might just be a young male with amazing genes, and in 20 years' time this will be one of the new giant tuskers. There was quite a big dam nearby, but they'd rather drink from the muddy puddle because there are no crocodiles in there. The central part of Kruger Park is known for its wide open spaces. And it's very pretty, but you don't see a lot of animals in there. The grass is just so long. The herbivores generally prefer the shorter grasses. So once you get back towards the drainage lines and the floodplains, that's where we tended to find most of the animals. The impalas are all in amazing condition because there's just food everywhere. This is a little hide near Nwanetsi picnic site. A very peaceful spot except for the hippos, which were making quite a lot of noise. This is the view from my tent. Now, if you've spent enough time in Kruger Park, especially in the main camps, you'll know how unusual it is to actually find a spot like that in one of the main campsites. We were very lucky. Well, the next day we headed off down towards the Sweni Loop, where we found this hyena, and there were a couple of others lying in the grass, and they were staring quite intently off into the bushes, and we eventually discovered there were some lions. I think they had a kill in there. They were finishing off a kill, and they didn't want to come out, and the hyenas didn't want to go any closer, so there was a bit of a standoff, but in the end nothing happened. I think the lions were just tired and moved off into the thicker bush. Very common in the park, the terrapins. They manage to avoid predation because they produce a really disgusting smelling secretion when they get harassed. Another baby snake. I didn't manage to get a video of this one because after I took the photograph it disappeared under the car, and it took a bit of PT trying to coax it out from under the car and off into the grass. On our way back to the camp we found a pretty big herd, at least 200 of them buffalo, all making their way towards a local stream for a drink. Most of the buffalo started frolicking about 50 meters from the water, and then as they got closer they calmed down and were a bit more dignified. And a baby monitor lizard came to visit our site. It was quite bold. I was surprised. Normally, as they get older, if they're accustomed to humans, they can become quite relaxed, but the babies are normally very shy, but not this one. And we also had a baby tree agama near the campsite. It's only about 10 centimeters long. They mostly eat ants. Just past Nsamani Dam, we found this pack of wild dogs sleeping next to the road. It was quite hard to determine how many there were. I think there were at least 11, but they were scattered over quite a wide area and quite hard to see in the grass. Every few minutes one of them would stand up and cause some excitement amongst the tourists, but then they would normally get back down almost immediately. That one that's just about to lie down has a tracking collar, which I think this is the leader of the group. It's normally the leader they put the tracking collar on. And eventually the lead dog got up and walked out into the road, and quite a few of the others also got up, so we thought they were about to get up and go on the hunt, but then they all went back to sleep again. The one standing at the back has a broken floppy ear. On one of our nights we were visited by this African wildcat. Easy to see how they were domesticated, because humans basically didn't have to do anything. These cats domesticated themselves. There was a hyena that pitched up while it was there, and instead of rushing off into the grass, which is what I thought it would do, it lay down, quite flat, but the hyena could clearly see it, and the hyena then lay down about 15 meters away. And after quite a while, about 15 minutes, eventually the cat moved off in the other direction, and then the hyena came past. And this crocodile was sleeping in the middle of the causeway, but it woke up when we got there, unfortunately, and disappeared into the safety of the water. It's been years since I saw them do their courtship display, so that was a treat. This elephant looked like he might want to cause us some trouble. He wanted to send us reversing back down the road, but we just parked there and stood our ground, and he lost interest. There's so much food around for them, I think they can't be bothered wasting time on tourists. The mother warthog had done a pretty good job with her babies, because she had 4 of them and they were growing quite big, and to keep 4 of them alive that long in an area renowned for its predators is pretty good going. Back at Nsamani Dam, there were these two elephants and then a herd of them that kept us entertained for quite a long time. The smaller guy on the left and the bigger guy on the right, and they had a good fight. This was a play fight, they weren't too serious, but they went at it for a long time, but eventually the little guy got tired, and I think the bigger one was taking it a bit too seriously. This was the point at which the smaller one decided enough was enough. And he tried to head off, but the bigger one followed him, and the little one managed to stay ahead. And the bigger one, well, he was quite aggressive. He had a lot of energy he still needed to work out, so he started chasing the geese around. The geese weren't exactly fleeing for their lives, they just flew off a short distance, so obviously they're used to elephants doing this.
Swimming there as well.
tourists in the little red car managed to avoid the herd of elephants and came back to enjoy the show. This herd of impala were at almost the same spot every day, just constantly eating, except the last afternoon where there was not an impala to be seen, so I assume a predator had come through and ruined their little paradise. Another elephant that had decided to have some fun with the cars. It was getting close to gate closing time and he was pushing everyone away from the direction of the camp, which was causing some stress. But like the other one, if you just stand your ground, eventually it loses interest, and he walked off into the bush and we were able to get past. I think this was the most interesting sighting of the trip. It was an enormous troop of baboons, and wherever you looked there was something going on. One thing that surprised me about them was just how playful and affectionate the male baboons, the younger male baboons, were with the babies. That's a younger male again clowning around, going upside down. At first I thought it was the young baboon's mother. Didn't expect to see a young male hugging one of the babies like that. The bigger male was harassing the younger ones, which were trying to hang out on the very edge of the branches. And then in the midst of everything, these ground hornbills suddenly landed and started running down the road. There's two adults there, and then one with the slightly paler red face is a juvenile. And then the juvenile lagging slightly behind the others. Baboons are quite formidable predators, especially the bigger males, but they weren't interested in the ground hornbills. Another sweet moment with a young male. Maybe the same one, it was hard to tell, they were all over the place. He couldn't resist in the end engaging in a bit of minor bullying, but this is still quite sweet. We'd headed up north from Satara and then turned back around to come down the Timbavati road, where we found this pack of 11 wild dogs. Not the same as the previous pack. We had a look at the collared ones and they were different. And this one with a very bloody face. They'd killed an impala just before we got there. And I'm not sure why only one of them had blood all over his face, because I'm sure they would have all been in there. There were two individuals in the pack that had collars on them for some reason. There's one of the big males that normally hangs around at the end of the herd. It's not the old males or even the old females that lead the buffalo herds, it's the young males that lead. We didn't see many herds of wildebeest, a few odd males, but the grass was just too long. They don't like long grass. And there where we did find some short grass along the Timbavati, we found quite a few wildebeest as well as zebra. A tiny malachite kingfisher. It's our second smallest kingfisher. A battalier enjoying some delicious roadkill. I couldn't work out what it was. I think it was maybe a reptile, but I'm not sure. But he wasn't going to leave anything behind. He spent quite a long time there picking up all the little bits and pieces all over the road, and there'd been quite a few cars that were arriving on both sides, but everybody just had to wait until he finished cleaning up. A kudu munching on some wild foxgloves. We could do with a few more kudu around here because we have forests of these foxgloves here that need some pruning. This is the most common starling in this area, replacing the glossy starling, which is what we get where we are. It has a black eye and a longer tail than the glossy starling. And this little scorpion came to say goodbye on our last night. Very, very mildly venomous. I think not even as serious as a bee sting, and quite a placid little guy. On our last morning we went for a short drive before going back to pack up, and we found these hyenas coming down the road. Quite an intimidating sight. They were on the hunt and eventually they just moved off into the bush. Quite an old, weather-beaten hyena. Walked for miles down the road. We went past it and came back probably an hour later and it was still walking. Thanks for watching.